I'm Alma Lee. I'm a psychotherapist and transformative lifestyle resiliency coach and author, and I want to help you reach your goals by teaching you how to step outside of those fear-based mindsets and into your powerful, loving self. Let's get started. Do you remember when you were a little kid and you got in trouble? You remember what happened when you got in trouble? A lot of people grew up in dysfunctional environments. I'll give you that. I'm not talking about trauma. I'm not talking about unfair things happening to you. I'm talking about discipline. And what this topic today is encompassing is consequences. And I honestly don't know why I haven't brought this up before, because it comes up so often in conversations around accountability. As adults, we have to be accountable, otherwise we will get stuck. I talk about it, I preach about it, I encourage people to do their own self-introspection, to isolate those areas of improvement and the things that you need to fix and how you need to sort of rectify those areas that you've screwed up in. And this is in alignment with this, talking about consequences. And I was having a session, of course, you know that's where I get my inspiration from, having a session with a young woman who was struggling in her relationship. Now, she's in her early 20s, and of course, me being who I am and, you know, being the wise one, the person that's sitting there having this interaction, this clinical intervention with her, I'm listening to her and I'm like, yep, sounds pretty standard to me. And what was happening was her boyfriend was, disrespecting her and treating her poorly, and her expectations was that something that she could learn in therapy, she could take back to her relationship, and she could employ that as a measure of improving the conditions of her relationship. Now, therapy for an individual is wonderful, and it does help your relationships, but often it doesn't help in the way that you think. Hear me out. What it does is it teaches you to understand what you're doing, because the clinical relationship that I have with my clients is just me and the person in front of me. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person, the other party, unless it's a couples session. That's a whole different ballgame. So I'm having this conversation with her, and I said, well, when he treats you poorly, what do you do? And she says, well, I get really upset and I yell at him. And I said, how does that work out for you? She says, well, he doesn't change. He doesn't do anything differently. And I say, okay, I get that. What are you doing differently? And she was like, well, I try to be nice and I try to be understanding. I'm like, no. That's not what I'm talking about. When you're disrespected by your boyfriend, what are you doing differently as opposed to yelling at him every time? Well, I try to communicate with him, and I'm like, no, let's reframe this. Let's look at this as a child and a teacher. And let's say the child is misbehaving in class, and the teacher says, listen, if you don't sit down and be quiet and pay attention to the lesson, I'm going to send you to the principal's office. And the little kid says, okay, I'll do better. So the kid sits down for a few moments, and the teacher goes back to work. Well, a few moments later, the little kid starts acting up again, and the teacher turns around and says, I told you, if you don't behave, you're going to get sent to the principal's office. And the child says, oh, yeah, I don't want that. So, okay. So the child, corrects their action. Teacher goes back to work. Are you noticing a trend yet? So the child starts to misbehave again. And then the teacher turns around. You get it. And this plays out in modern day relationships, especially when I'm working with individuals who come to me because they're struggling in the patterns of their relationship. And, it's not a judgment. This is not a blame game. It's not about me shaking my finger and saying, ha, you deserve this because you're not doing anything differently. It's not about that, but it is about consequences. And when we are in relationships, and it's not just isolated to romantic partnerships, but any relationship where it is there's behaviors that are happening that you don't like or you don't tolerate, whether you're an employer and you have an employee who keeps coming in late or doesn't dress well or isn't showering, and is treating the customers badly, you have the responsibility as the employer to address that behavior. And what you have to do in that relationship is you have to sit down and communicate clearly with your employee and say, hey, what's going on with you? How can I support you better? What can I do? And this is an initial conversation. Let's do this in a step-by-step process. You always want to have an initial conversation when someone is not acting right. And you ask them, what can I do to better support you so that you don't engage in these types of behaviors? Come to find out, you might find out that your employee is struggling. Maybe they have a sick spouse or maybe they've got a sick baby at home. You never know if you don't have a clear line of communication. So you have to open up the lines of communication. Then they have to be receptive. They have to be a two-way street. It doesn't ever work well when it's just one-way communication. And then from that end, you set a plan for improvement. So you offer up the additional supports. You offer up maybe a different work schedule or whatever it is you have available to your employee. And you offer that up as a measure of your servant leadership, so that the next time that employee violates the contract, as it were, that you can sit down with them and say, okay, you and I already spoke about this. You expressed an understanding that you are not going to engage in these behaviors again. And now you have. So now I have to hold you accountable to that. I have to document this. So that's just the professional realm of things. And that could actually escalate into termination, right? And all of us, we all know this. We all know there has to be boundaries, but boundaries are only as good as they are enforced. And in partnership with anybody, there has to be consequences. Otherwise, behaviors do not change. They don't. And that's what I want to get to the root of here today in this episode, is to ask you, what are you doing differently as a means of getting your needs met in these relationships with other people, whether it's family, your partner, a coworker, a boss, a child perhaps? What is it that you are allowing with regularity, and then you're getting frustrated because your needs are not being met or your expectations are not being met in that connection? Again, it's not a blame game, but you have to understand that you have a responsibility to not only express a boundary, but you have to follow through. You have to. You have got to show that your words carry weight, because otherwise, if you don't, that person is just going to go along to get along as far as they can, because that's how humans are made, especially children. We can't let children walk all over us. Right? You have to say, look, if you misbehave, you're going to the principal's office. That's all there is to it. The next time that the child misbehaves, then you stop what you're doing, you take the child, and you walk them up to the principal's office. And they're going to have a fit and complain and say, I'll do better. I promise I'll do better. Well, I understand that. I understand that's what you say now, but I made a boundary very clear with you. And this is the consequence, because we made an agreement that you would improve. That's the thing. And in romantic partnerships, just like with my client the other day, she was not comfortable with what I had suggested, which was for her to actually move out of the home. She had the ability, and she has the ability, to leave her partner, but she chooses not to because she's stuck in the mindset that if she does something different, that his behavior will change. And I keep telling her, no, it doesn't work that way. You literally have to move differently in order to get your needs met. And I get it. It's uncomfortable as hell to step away from something that you've grown attached to. But that is the onus on us, and our own healing is when we learn how to identify those things in us that are broken, that need to be patched up, that need to be healed, so that we can put ourselves first, so that we love ourselves. You have to love yourself fully. And when you love yourself fully, you don't have a problem with holding other people accountable when they don't meet you in alignment with whatever partnership you're in with them. I know that's wordy. Consequences have to happen. When someone is not treating you fairly, when someone is not doing what they say they're going to do, then it becomes your responsibility to enforce the boundary and to make sure that there are consequences. And don't get it twisted. It's not about punishment. I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a punishment. It's just a natural course of action when things don't go to plan, and it's because someone chose to move differently outside of the agreed upon contract, whatever that is, whether it's a workspace, a workplace arrangement, a contract with employment, or maybe it's a romantic partnership where, your partner says, okay, I won't yell at you anymore. I won't call you names anymore, which I think is a deal breaker, but hey, that's me. I'm not going to tolerate being cussed out. It's just, it ain't worth it to me, but that's me. And I realize a lot of you guys out there don't function the way I do. And I think disrespect is a deal breaker. I don't think any relationship can be saved if someone's disrespecting you, at least not at that point. I think that you should break up. If somebody is disrespecting you, I think you should stop and end the partnership. And both of you go your separate ways and go talk to a therapist or a mentor and get your act together so that when you do either come back together or you start a new partnership with someone else, you're healthier. Because disrespect does not work at all. It's not healthy. It does not bode well. And you can pretend it's not there and delude yourself. But at any rate, that's what this young woman was doing. She was tolerating disrespect and she was not enforcing consequences. And that's the problem. And that's the problem I think a lot of us face is we get so attached to wanting a particular outcome with somebody that the idea of stepping away from something that we just, we wish that we could claw and kick and scream and argue and yell at somebody else to get them to change feels easier than it does for us to actually say, I value myself enough and I love myself enough to walk away from this because I deserve better. I don't deserve being yelled at. I don't deserve to be talked down to. You are obviously not changing. And the reason that you're not changing is because you are not being faced with consequences. And those consequences are up to me to enforce. And it sucks so hard when you're attached to a situation, when you're an employer and you have an employee who, when they do show up, they do a great job. But then when they don't show up, it really sucks because then you have to hold a standard for the rest of your employees to enforce those, across the board standards. You can't give one person a whole bunch of leeway and not give that to all of your employees. It's not fair and it's not good business. So you do have to hold that space of responsibility. And it sucks. But I am here to peel back the onion so that you can look at your whole life with clarity and ask yourself this question. What are you tolerating in your relationships with other people that is creating a bubble of distress and pain and suffering, and it's got you feeling stuck? And it's got you feeling like you can't move and you can't breathe and you can't do anything different. What is it in that relationship? Because you can always find another partner. You can always find another relationship. You can always find another job. I stand on that 100%. You don't have to stay stuck because you're, fearful of the unknown. That's really all it is. It's the idea that you can ignore or yell at a problem to make it either go away or not exist to begin with. You betray yourself when you do that. When you misalign your energy and you focus more on changing other people, you waste so much of your energy. And you disrespect yourself when you do that too, because you're not honoring yourself at all when you yell and you lower your vibration to someone else's disrespect. That's beneath you. And you're not doing that person any favors. If you love somebody, they're disrespecting you, and you say, well, I love them. Love them enough to let them go. Love them enough to say, I wish you well, but I love myself too, and I can't exist in this space that you're creating. It's harmful. It's disrespectful. I deserve better, and you deserve consequences. You deserve to be placed in a condition where comfort is no longer an option. And you have to understand that I mean what I say and that when I tell you that I'm going to leave you if you disrespect me again, that is exactly what I intend on doing. And you got to stand on that. You have to stand on that. Otherwise, what are you standing for if you're not standing up for yourself? If you're not enforcing those boundaries, you're not offering the opportunity for somebody else to grow by challenging them with your absence, or firing the employee, or taking the little kid to the principal's office. You have the responsibility to ensure you are the steward of your well-being with how you're treated by other people, with how your time is commodified and used by other people. And how are you allowing your time and your energy to be vacated by other people? Are these people respecting you? Because if you don't respect yourself, I have a newsflash for you. They're not going to respect you, because they can't, because they see how you treat yourself. They see what you think of yourself, and they know what they can get away with. And it's not necessarily because they're evil people, it's just because they're human. For the most part, many of us go through life just in survival mode. We're just looking to get our own needs met. And until we reach a buffering point where somebody else says, you ain't coming over here with that, then we have to shift and change, because our normal behavior is no longer tolerated. So it pushes us outside of our comfort zone, and it causes us to evolve. Think about it. The only chance that you can have, and what I think this young woman that I was talking about earlier has in this specific relationship, is to break up. Because this young man that she's with, he's not going to change magically overnight without being put in a situation that causes him to. It is the equivalent of taking a tube of toothpaste, taking the cap off, lying the toothpaste tube on the countertop, and then holding your toothbrush at the end of the tube and waiting for the toothpaste to magically appear on your toothbrush. Like you're just waiting for it to come out. It's not going to. It's too comfortable. It's comfortable in the tube. You got to apply pressure. That's what you have to do. And that's what we have to do in our relationships when we want results. When we want somebody to behave a certain way, we have to apply pressure. And sometimes applying pressure to other people means applying pressure to ourselves. And that is where we get caught up. Because while we want other people to change, a lot of times we're not willing to do it ourselves. And that's what I do in my role, in my job as a coach, as a consultant, is I challenge people to think outside of their normal perspectives and say, hey, you ain't doing this person any favors by allowing them to walk all over you the way you have been. You just can't do it anymore. You're not offering any consequences. You're saying one thing and you're yelling, but all they're inferring is that you're just loud and nagging. And so all they're going to do is hunker down while you nag, knowing full well that you are not going to stand in your enforcement of your boundary. That's really what they're going to do. They're not going to change until you do. And so you got to think about that. You got to think about the consequences of your own actions too. It's an opportunity. Don't think of it as a punishment. Think of it as an opportunity. All humans are fallible. I say this with routine regularity in all of my clinical interventions with all of my clients. All humans are fallible. And the reason I say that is because every time we screw up, we have a tendency to self-deprecate. And when you change the perception of mistakes from I screwed up because I am a screw up, which is what a lot of us do, you can say, I screwed up because I'm a human, not because I'm a screw up. And then you can acknowledge change from a space that doesn't have the shame attached to it. So you can do it and be like, yep, this is a lesson learned. What did I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I become a better person through this experience? That's really what this is all about. And consequences have to be enforced, because otherwise you will not get your needs met by other people who are mistreating you if you don't. That's just being a doormat. And you can't yell your way into changing, because nobody responds to that. When's the last time somebody yelled at you and you thought, I really think I need to be a better person now because that person chewed my ass? No, you don't do that. You just automatically assume that that person is unchained, unhinged, angry, nagging, and then when they don't enforce a boundary, you see them as a doormat, and then you lose respect for them. So you got to ask yourself, is that the person that you want to be? I mean, do you want to be seen as a nagging doormat? Or do you want to be seen as someone who respects him or herself enough to step away from an attachment, a situation, and values and respects themselves more than the attachment, and embodies through their actions that they won't tolerate any of that negative energy in their space. Think about it. It sucks, but it's necessary, and it's how you grow, and it's how you find your purpose, and it's how you lead a joyful life. And I promise you, you learn how to respect yourself. And when you learn how to respect yourself through enforcement of consequences with other people will respect you too. All right. From Fear to Love. This has been an LBM production. Please like, subscribe, and share this show. Thanks for listening.